So, welcome to another episode of Scouting Synopsis. Today, we're taking you to the Windy City, talking a little bit of Chicago Fire. It's been a few rough years, but they have a beautiful city.
Wait,
And they
hold
have
on a second. Nashi, why is our guest introducing us? Like, what's going on here? This is our show, and I'm confused as to why our guest talked first. Like, what is that about? What's up, man?
Well, he goes in the south as the Swamp Daddy, so he might be the Sorare in the States Daddy too now. I don't know. I might have to just assume my role as an underling to the Swamp Daddy. So, what's going on, boys? It's good to be here.
My guy Jorge's taking over.
Yeah, it's so good. Look, man, y'all gonna step down. Someone's got to fill the shoes, right? We had the legendary Trip and B in here, and like I don't know how I'm filling the shoes. I'm kind of
winner.
Listen, the numbers went down as soon as I took over. I'm not saying like what, like but hey, we're here. We're gonna talk some Chicago Fire, and we have Nashi. So hey, no one wants to hear about me. No one wants to hear about Chris, the MLS card guy. We're all here to talk about Nashi. So how have you been? How's it going?
I've been good, mate. I've actually been doing a lot of gallery reshuffling from the news, and there's a good chance I've completely lost my mind. So I know we're going to talk about Chicago, but I also want to make it about me, and I need some reassurance. I need some validation for my recent moves. So I think I've completely lost my head recently, but yeah, I'm all in on the MLS. That's the underlying theme. So I'm sure we'll get into that.
No, it's funny because we were talking about this. We're like, look, this is the Chicago Fire show, but so much has happened and so rare, and we haven't even really like fully talked about it on the pod at all.
Yeah.
But it is Kuiper season. We have it in here, but before that, we will want to talk about the restructure. Nashi, if you want to share your screen, you can do that. There's an option down below if you wanted to share your gallery, but kind of walk us through the moves you've been making. You're saying you're going full MLS. Why?
Well, pretty much. I feel like I was trying to move up. I've been trying to move up through the ranks, and moving up in scarcity has kind of been the hardest jump for me to make. Like, it feels risky, you're trying to get up there, get one or two cars, and you've got to get it right. And I slowly got on the brink of like trying to take a little shot at a unique division. Ooh. And I kind of, when I was thinking about it, you really need to like hide that Maxi Morales. We don't want to see him. But I'll take you back. So the start of last season, the real card and the real move that got me to the position to where I feel like, all right, this can be done in the MLS with America Division cards was Hector Herrera. Now, now he's gone on to be a great card, but I picked him up back in the day, his unique card I can't remember it. You can probably find him down there. Keep scrolling. But I picked him up for a deal. This was at a time when no one believed in him. He just got here, but I think it was 0.6 at the time, peanuts for him. And he obviously went on to have a great season. I realized, because of what we've done on the podcast, I think maybe my edge is over in America, is in the MLS, because in terms of picking out them guys that are just, if you're just looking at the stats and looking from the outside, you think this guy's just been trashed. This is hopeless. Like, I would never go near this card. But if you get them right, they can just turn season to season, as you know, and have some upside. And that's basically what I've lent into. And my first port of call for this year's Hector Herrera was Lorenzo Insigne, and I picked his unique card. The same. This was like a month ago too. Like, it seems like he's staying now. But I said,
this is not a lot that you paid for him, actually, to be fair.
At the time, $3,000 and a couple of good rare cards, because he was getting
Carlos Heel.
He was getting linked back to Europe and Saudi Arabia in this, but I kind of, again, it's a bit of inside knowledge where I was like, I don't see, he's on $11 million a year. There's no other person in the world other than, I guess, the Toronto head office that thinks Lorenzo Insigne is worth $11 million a year. So
transfer market.
Yeah, so it was a bit of like the just common sense logic that during the heat of the rumors, I thought maybe I can take an advantage of that. So once he's here, now I've got old man Hector, I've got old man Lorenzo. On their day though, can be great cards, and I've started to build around them. And that's where we're at. So we're all in now. It's pretty hard to reverse out of things. So my general strategy is it's the new challenger division, but via the MLS, and try and compete with the big boys is kind of the way.
I love this. Well, really quickly before we get into Chicago, and I promise we will get to Chicago because you do
We
follow
have
them
to.
quite a bit. You've got my boy Keegan Rosenberry, who I've praised multiple times on this show, so I'm going to take full credit for that one. You've also picked up a cheeky little Nathan here, which I love because he was out all last year, and I feel like people kind of forget, how good he was and how good he can be. And then you've got a new who going over here as well. Your Stuver, talk to me about that one because he's kind of
Not safe.
up on the ropes there a little bit.
Well, yeah, the problem is I ain't got the money to go into this division and start, buying. I can't buy the Andre Blake. So, as with everything, there's a bit of risk. And my two goalkeeper choices are things that where by the time you know who the starter is, you can't get them for that price, So, I'm kind of, again, I could be wrong. That's the skill, I guess, in some of the scouting is that I could be wrong here, but I've been to Austin and Brad Stuver down there is an absolute god. And it actually was discussions about people were saying in different chats and stuff like, oh, I think Cleveland might have the job. Stuver's not safe. And I was just sitting there reading it thinking to myself, I disagree with that. Like Stuver's nailed. And I thought, damn, I saw he's unique or not. I said, I got to put my money where my mouth is. I can't just be sitting here like in the shadows, like judging people's opinions. Like, and it kind of, that one stemmed from that. And I do think Stuver is the guy in Austin. I mean, he's part of that club. He's part of that community. He's more than like, it will be such a disruption to the dressing room if they dropped him. Even if Cleveland was 10% better than him, just within football, if the same coach is there and the same group of players, you can't drop a guy like that without it affecting the squad. So I just don't see, unless he just has a disastrous run. And Austin were terrible, but I don't think he was that bad last year. He kind of, he didn't have much in front of him, much protection. The other one is slightly more dicey. I'm less confident in is Jonathan Bond, but I picked him up for cheap. And he's a guy that had the same Stuver problem where the Galaxy's defense and their whole team, quite frankly, was absolutely abysmal last year. And I think they're a team, obviously we're not going to get into that today, but I think they're a team on the up in terms of, I like some of their signings. I like Maya Yoshida getting his fitness and coming in as a leader back there. I like Mickey Yamane is a good little player. Caceres is coming back, more experience. Obviously they're lacking a bit of legs, but I think they're basically a team that could improve a lot from last season. And I also kind of think the same thing. Jonathan Bond's been there, Vanney has been there for every season. And it seems like it would be a weird thing to bring in McCarthy. I think they're equal talent. Like, I think they're reasonably equal. Like, if it was the other way around, I'd say if Bond went to LA and McCarthy stayed, I think McCarthy's going to be the guy. It's kind of one of them. But just that's based my two punts, and that's where we're at in the goalie position. So I'm excited for the season because I'm pretty invested. I'm pretty balls deep at this point. So we'll see.
Scared money don't make no money, right? And that's what it is. But like, it's kind of justified. You got Cleveland, who was supposed to be Frey's backup for like 3 years in a row, and it never happened. So you see a guy like that with that quality going to behind Stuver, you're like, ooh, it's a little questionable. But you're right. You can't mess with the vibes. You can't mess with them. Speaking of vibes. Chicago
Chicago. So how do you want to do this? Do you want to go through what I think will be the starting 11, and then we'll do some sort of takeaways from there as we go, or do you have any sort of questions leading into it?
We'll kind of go. We'll kind of go from goalkeeper forward, kind of break down each position, give us a stack, and then give us like a young breakout player. But we can start with the goalkeeper. So I'm hoping that there's a right answer to this question because I own him. So please, dear God, don't tell me that Chris Brady's not going to start. No,
there isn't a question, and he's the only risk of Brady is if he's too good, really. If you're an owner, because he's going to Europe. He's the thing about obviously they had Slanina there, and he had a ton of talent too. And I'm not going to split hairs who's got more potential or whatnot, but the thing that was really stood out with Brady last year was his character. Like I don't know if you saw any of them, but he done like some post-game interviews where sometimes he made mistakes as young goalies do. And he went out to the camera and he said, yeah, that was on me. Like, I got to do better, And you're like, whoa, like that guy's probably going to do, he's almost got that like rough and ready, like East Coast, like mentality already. And he's just like, no, like that's on me, like taking responsibility. And I think in terms of the longevity of his career, that's going to, I really think he's got a ton of potential, and there's no doubt he's the guy. He's the guy back there, and they just need to protect him better this year.
In the case that he's gone, who steps up in his place? Because obviously Chicago's another one of those teams that just pumps out goalkeepers left and right. So,
I mean, he's not
gone.
He's not gone in terms of this season. I don't think Spencer Ritchie's a fine backup. He's fine. You know, he's not a disaster, but he's nothing great. He's just a backup journeyman. It'll be Brady's job. But I mean, if you're going to buy the Super Air and spend that kind of money, it's as safe as it can be. If he stays in the MLS, he's going to be the starting goalkeeper at any team. But he's that good that he could, you know, kind of like the Thiago Almada, where it's like, I want this guy, I want to spend money on this guy, under 23 kind of stud, but you know he's going to go at some point, so you're just playing the time bomb.
It's if, not when he goes to Europe. Or no, it's when, not if. Yeah, I messed that up. This is completely bad.
And there's a lot of those.
There's a lot of those. Yeah, there are a bunch that we kind of expect.
It feels like not a lot of them did go to Europe though. Like a lot of the guys who you're thinking, you know, like the Tolkiens, the Almadas, or whatever off the top of my head, that you're thinking, yeah, they're probably going to go, and they're still here. So I mean, it's good for the league. It's exciting. So maybe the Messi factor is real. Maybe that is the Messi factor. You know what I mean? People want to stay where the eyes are. You know, because I don't blame like Facundo Torres down here in Florida now. You know, Messi's around. There's some eyes on the league on what he's doing. It's kind of fun. I mean, playing the MLS, playing in these stadiums, you know, playing against some of the greatest players of all time. Like, I don't blame these kids for maybe hanging around for a year or two longer.
See, I'm glad somebody else agrees. Because right now it's like, are you going to go sit on the bench somewhere? Or are you going to sit here and lock Messi up for 5 minutes? Like, come on now. Like, you get your chance to shine. And there it is. Donald brings up a good point. The Fire drafted a kid from Notre Dame. Do you know anything about him? Or Chris, I know you're kind of in that lower division, always scouting the kids. Do you guys know anything about this guy? Or
no clue?
I know nothing about him. But
Donald, you are too in the weeds. But he came up to the Fire system.
I think it'll be one, you know, watch these young goalkeepers that get drafted, and they can start a lot faster than we think they can, you know, with the Celentano and the Schulte and, you know, guys like that are starting within a year of coming out of college. These guys are more prepared coming out of college than they have been before. So don't discount a guy just because he was drafted. That's for sure. But yeah, he'll start in like next pro, and you know, you can watch and see if he's any good there.
Yeah, the Fire have a pretty good track record there. So I mean, they've probably got some good. They know what to look for. So yeah. Moving on to the defense, I guess. If you guys are ready, and there's been a couple of signings. They got rid of Navarro. They got rid of Suke, I believe, who kind of didn't. I'm not sure if he's still there, but he came from, I think, Ligue 1, and people thought he was going to be half decent, and he was just kind of he wasn't.
He was there.
He was there, and they're bringing. They've replaced Andrew Gutman for Navarro, and again, Gutman's kind of just a guy too. But the thing I like about Gutman, and it's kind of a theme in this team, like this team's identity, I think, is going to be this year, if they're going to have any success, is they're going to have to be like the nitty gritty, like good mentality, just in your face, like honest, hard-working team, because they haven't got the talent to compete with some of these teams in the East. And if you look, like moving ahead a bit, but if you look at like, you know, Chris Mueller coming back in, like a local boy, Chris Brady, Gutman, like Chihos, these are kind of like rough and ready. They're not guys you're paying your ticket to see, but that's what they've got in the roster. And like sometimes if you put a bunch of guys like that, and obviously they bring in some other new signings we'll talk about, that they kind of could have a good mentality this year. And that's going to be the biggest asset to them, I think, being realistic, because there's such a stacked kind of Eastern Conference this year. I don't know if you guys agree, but it's
for sure. For sure. The East is loaded this year. Talk to me about the center back position, because there's a bunch of guys that I recognize. So you've got Chichos, who you've always been very high on. Carlos Terran is still back there, and then Wyatt Omsberg and Mauricio Pineda as well. And Pineda was a guy that was getting national team looks like a couple of years ago, and he can't get on the field. Kind of hybrid between defensive mid and center back. Yeah. But talk to me about that position and kind of how those minutes break out, because it's crowded.
I think the two guys, Chihos is the captain. He's going to play when he's fit, and he is good. He's played in the Bundesliga, top level experience. Carlos Terran is head and shoulders the most talented player, but his hamstring seems to be made of spaghetti, so he just can't stay fit. And it's frustrating. It's frustrating just as a fan because you see him do stuff and he's so athletic, and you're like, man, like this guy, like what's this kid doing? He's only 21, 22, and obviously he came through with Duran, who went on to Aston Villa and is doing it in the Premier League now. So he's got the path ahead of him, but he just hasn't stayed fit. And I think that will actually potentially be the most important sort of little side note for their season, because if he stays fit, that's a solid centre-back duo right there, because you've got the athleticism of Turan and the experience of Chios. But as soon as he gets injured, the level last year just dropped a lot, because it's not fair on Pineda to play him in a back two. He done well when there was like a three at the back, kind of three centre-backs, because he's not really a centre-back like you said, Chris. So yeah, if I was them, I'd be trying to pick up some more cover there. I think that's an important position. And they might go ahead and do that, and they probably will. They've got some room now, because they did, like, arguably, before we get to who they brought in this year, they got rid now of Jairo Torres. They mutually agreed, I think, to get rid of that last week. And Casper looks to be on his way out in the same boat. And getting rid of that dead wood, and they were taking up a lot of money and a lot of space, and they were absolutely horrific pressing the whole time there. So that's almost the best business that Chicago have done. They brought in the fifth most expensive player in MLS history in Hugo Kuipers, but as a fan, I'm almost happier with the fact that they got rid of those two. So there is a bit of room there. So maybe the centre back is something that they look at.
Addition by subtraction.
Yeah, they brought in a guy at right back. I can't say that, Aragoni or something. I'm not sure. I haven't seen much of him, so hopefully. But normally when fullbacks come to the MLS, you just hope they're not horrific and they just can kind of do a job, and hopefully he can. I don't know much about him, so that looks like the starting back line to me. I don't know if you have anything to elaborate on that. But.
Well, I just know I was reading earlier, and Donald brings it up, that Sahlquist, he came from Denmark. He came up from the Midtjylland Youth Academy, I guess, and he came in as a defender. So that's something to look forward to. It could be a great distributor. Midtjylland is obviously a good team over in Denmark, so that's another good thing to look for. And I mean, is this defense going? What are you expecting as far as the defense from not conceding too much? Because when you have a rough team, when you have a young guys like trying to figure it out, defense tends to lack. How are we feeling about the defense here?
If they brought in cover for Tehran, I think in terms of an isolation, the back four's fine. The goalkeeper's very good. But where this team, I think, could be a sneak. This is like kind of what I'm saying. Like the identity of this team could be solid and hope for some magic from, Shaqiri and Kuipers and nick a goal. Like that's kind of the best way to success for them. And I think the strongest argument for them being okay, a lot better defensively this year, comes from their midfield and their their additions there, because there's actually a lot to talk about, and we can kind of segue into that. Fede Navarro is an absolute maniac. Defensively, he's excellent. He hasn't really shown himself, I don't think, yet in the league because of his injuries again, but he was out pretty much all last season. He does love a yellow card, but he's like a Jose Martinez, you know what I mean? And where he's just, you know what you're going to get for him. No one's going to have an easy game. He's going to be there. He's going to get booked. He's going to get sent off a couple of times, but he's going to be in your face. And that really helps in front of the back four. And when he wasn't there, they kind of suffered because they had good players like Gaston Jimenez is a fine player on the ball, but off the ball, he just wasn't doing it. Obviously, a huge pickup. I don't know if Kellyn Acosta's been announced, but it's basically, I don't know, the MLS is weird, but he's there. He's going. And it's an underrated signing. It's not a bells and whistle attacking player, but he's an excellent player for MLS level, in my opinion, in terms of experience, knowing the position, knowing the league. There's going to be no adjustment. And I really like him in there. So if you got them two in the double pivot, that's a fairly good protection in front of the back four. And potentially the most interesting factor of the midfield shakeup, I think that it looks like from a couple of preseason games that they're going to have Brian Gutierrez in the 10 role and push Shaqiri out to the right. And what that does, I think both sides, I think Guti's ready to come on. He had a good season last year in a bad team. He's got a ton of talent, and he's got more energy in there too on the defensive side of the ball than Shaqiri does. Shaqiri, if you watched him, was a little bit embarrassing, honestly. His work rate, and but the other reason I like Gutierrez in the 10 is Shaqiri. There was nothing last year. They were playing with Casper or Kutsias up front, and Kuipers he's mobile up more than but he's kind of like he's not going to be running channels all day. He's going to be in the box trying to get goals. So having Guti there to run beyond him, I think is going to be really important for their attack too, because you need, if he's holding it up, you needed that third man running. And I think the idea generally is move Shaqiri out wide and just get him delivering quality into Kuipers, and Kuipers putting away his chances, which he should do. He's got a big price tag and he's been doing it in the Belgian league. And I mean, yeah, you never know how these guys adjust, but he should have the quality to score goals in the MLS. So I think that, although it's a subtle change and them two guys were on the pit field for a lot of last season, I think that strategic change actually might be pretty good. The downside of it is Shaqiri's not going to track back on the right wing. So I think they'll play Fede Navarro right centre, and he'll have to run for two men basically and hope that Aragoni's half decent. But that is a little nuance that I think could actually have a decent impact on their outcome. On the other side, Chris Mueller's back again, fits into the theme of just, I like Mueller. He's going to work his socks off. Yeah, exactly. He's going to work his socks off. Good on his shift. He'll be there. He'll run. He'll do it. Him and Gutman down that side will be, it's not going to be an easy game. They're not got the talent of other teams, but maybe defensively he'll help out a lot. And Haile Selassie off the bench with some pace. So it is, it's not exciting, let's be honest, but I think if I'm being optimistic, I think, all right, these guys are going to put a shift in. They're going to be hard to beat. And if Kuipers becomes the guy, if Shaqiri can find a new role out on the wing and find his space and find his deliveries, maybe we can beat some teams on the counter. We can get some 1-0, 2-0, which is obviously an untried and untested and unsuccessful strategy in the MLS specifically. But realistically, talent for talent, if you look at that squad, that's what they are. They got guys that the fans will like. They'll give 110%, and that kind of has been the criticism of Shaqiri, where you're just watching him strolling around, do it. And it's like, at least I think now, in them, they're not going to. The expectations are low, but I think the team's going to give 100%. And if teams show up in Chicago and on their game, I can see them being in there. And if they're anywhere near the playoff line by the end of the season, I think that's a fair thing. If they get another piece of quality to the attack, then we might have a different conversation. That might be enough. So they got some bones there. They restructured. They got rid of the deadwood. I don't expect a ton of them this season, but I hope they can at least make you proud. And I'm excited to see if Kuipers can do it, because he will get, like, Gutierrez is an excellent player. Shaqiri can still put in a brilliant delivery on his left foot. We see him do it for Switzerland. He just hasn't really done it. So that's kind of the overall take from where I'm at. I don't know if you guys have any differing or opinions to add right there.
Well, my thing is like moving Shaqiri to the right, and I've heard that from a lot of people too. And do you think that's going to change things for Shaqiri? Like, obviously the quality is there for him to put in balls, but if you watch, like you were saying, like I remember specifically when they played in Orlando, watching Shaqiri, like, it's bad. Like, it makes you mad. Like, I'm not even a Fire fan, but watching Shaqiri's just body language out there made me mad. And it's one of those things where, like, moving him to the right, like, yeah, it's great, the quality's there, but like, what's going to get him to really buy in and want him to like really perform for this team? Because it doesn't seem like it's been there.
No, that's fair, and it's I think the strategically putting him on the right was because he will be able to generate more space for himself there, because I think he'll just drift into like little pockets, and he hasn't got the legs to get away from people anymore, and that was kind of hurting him in the 10, because he'd be on the half turn and he might be able to turn away from them, but then he's looking for Kasper Przylko to make a run, and he's going to be waiting until, you know what I mean? He could have flew to Poland.
He's still waiting.
Yeah, he's still waiting. So there's a bit of sympathy there. He had no
It's the
one.
off season, and he's still waiting.
Yeah, he had no one to hit. And I think in terms of like you see this in general, you can have players that are static if you've got runners, So that was really, it just didn't work last year. Whereas like say Chicago was going to play with two pacey forwards who are going to get in behind off the shoulder, then I think Shaqiri could play in the 10, because he doesn't have to carry the ball. And vice versa, if you've got someone like Gutierrez who can run with the ball, play it into a static sort of target man and then run off of him, that works too, because he can run behind. But last season they had static Shaqiri with static centre forward, and there just wasn't nothing there. You know what I mean? There was no.
I could have played defense against them.
Yeah, exactly. It just didn't work.
Yeah.
So now they've got Gutierrez in there to do them runs, and I think Shaqiri will be able to. On the ball, you still sometimes you just see him hit a pass, and you're like, well, okay, yeah. So I think he'll just be looking for space, and hopefully that the quality upgrade up front will be the catalyst for him to buy in and say, well, if I make that pass, someone's going to be there, And sometimes the run makes a pass. That's an optimist view. His attitude's been pretty embarrassing, honestly. But he actually, from a Sorare point of view, isn't horrific. Like if you, do you know what I mean? Like, but it's like you said, it's his body language. It's just kind of, you just watch him and it's kind of infuriating. And I don't think that has a good. Sad. Yeah, it doesn't have a good impact on the rest of the team either. But I think looking at this team, like Gutman, Acosta, Navarro, Chihos, Brady, Mueller, they're guys just good, honest, sort of blue collar
workhorse
guys. You know what I mean? So they're gonna put the shift in. They're gonna work regardless. And like if we can get a spark from maybe Guti, Shaqiri, and Kuipers and get a couple goals in them, then there'll be a solid team. I think. They've definitely improved in my opinion.
Momentum is a funny thing, right? You start to win a couple games at the beginning, you're high up in the table. All of a sudden, it looks like you might have a decent season. Then guys start trying a little bit harder. You start to get that buy-in from everybody else. Like you mentioned, you're gonna have guys running around constantly. There will be constant, work that's put in, and you just need those one or two moments of brilliance to really have a pretty decent team. I mean, there've been plenty of teams that have kind of relied on that. I mean, that's the Red Bulls' whole history. It's just lots of running and one or two moments of brilliance, right? So where does that moment of brilliance come from? Is it Goody? Is it Shaqiri?
I think the key is obviously how good and how effective Kuipers can be, because otherwise you just have if Kuipers is a dud and just doesn't take to the league, and you saw Red Bulls, I think it was Van Zier went there and he just kind of from the same league and he was doing well there at USG, and then he was non-existent. So if that happens, I think they're dead in the water. So I think that is the key, because I think like you said, it's going to be trying to win the ball back and then get the ball into Shaqiri, get set piece. I don't know. When you think about it, when you look at the quality of some of these other teams, especially in the East, and you think, well, this guy, it is hard to see where. But I think that's why I sort of go back to what I was saying. Their best bet, I think, is having a bit of humility with their talent and saying, all right, we're going to outwork everyone. And I do think that the bulk of them guys, Kellen Acosta's a good leader. He's going to, have standards there. I think there's at least a chance of that. And I think that's the way that they find success, by locking it down sort of defensively, frustrating, outworking teams. And then as teams are pushing forward, trying to get it into Shaqiri, obviously, and then if try and find Kuipers or Guti, they have enough about them. I think there's enough talent in them three. And Mueller's not a dud, you know what I mean? He's fine. He'll make them runs. He'll at least come in at the back post and make himself a nuisance. So there's enough there. But I mean, when you on paper versus some of these other attacks, it's not extremely exciting. But maybe they'll bring someone in. I think if they brought another sort of elite level, like instead of Jairo Torres, and then maybe there's enough there to actually score some goals, and then if they can shut it down. But it's optimistic. To put it that way.
It's very optimistic. Well, it's funny. Like before you started talking, I was like, Kellen Acosta. I wasn't sure about the move. Like time at LAFC was like okay, like maybe not from a Sorare perspective, but he does lock down that back of the midfield. And like now you're talking like you know what, the Chicago Fire do need a Kellen Acosta. Like it is just a major. Like again, probably not for Sorare, but for the team itself, like Kellen Acosta might be one of the pieces that unlocks this team. Just having that solidity in the back.
Yeah, and I think he aligns with like when you think of Chicago, it's kind of like it is like a blue collar kind of mentality, you know, with like it's cold out there. And like sometimes the players like Kellen Acosta isn't an LA player necessarily. You want an Ilie, you know, you want someone whose name doesn't even make sense. Like in LA, you want a bit of flair. You don't want sort of just a hard working, solid number 8, number 6, 8. You know what I mean? Like, and I think he just fits with a place like that a little bit more. The same with a Mueller type player. Like a Mueller's never going to work in LA. You know, you need, you know, but yeah. So I think Acosta's he's definitely a starting level player in the MLS. I think it'd be pushed to argue that he's not. And yeah, I just think in that system, I think he will be important if that's their identity, where it's just, all right, we just get together and we work hard to try and create some space for Shaqiri and the big man up front. So yeah, that's about as best as I can paint it.
So for some reason, you've bought into the hype off of this wonderful episode, and you think Chicago's going top of the table. You want to build a stack for cheap because it's Chicago. Everybody's cheap, so like the best stack you can build. What's your stack? Who are you going with? You got goalkeeper, defender, mid, forward, and an extra.
I mean, I think the most
for Sorare specifically, not who's going to be the most.
Yeah, for Sorare, well, we start obviously Brady's in there. Then you need obviously Kuipers is in there, right? So if you're looking now, we have to win. There's no threshold anymore. You have to win, so you have to look for upside, right? Yeah. So I think what I'm doing for defense is taking Gutman and hoping that Chris Mueller can bundle his way through a defender, lay it out wide. Gutman whips it in, Kuipers goal, right? So there's some upside there. And then you got to take Shaqiri, I think, and I think you got to take. I'd take Guti and Shaqiri and just hope that something happens. Shaqiri can put together some AA. Maybe you get, a clean sheet and a set piece. Shaqiri to Chihos, or I don't know. There's a couple of things that could happen that might work, but yeah, this is not financial advice. I think I'd take. Do you know what I'd maybe do? Because we're saying defensively they might be okay. I'd go defensive stack: Brady, Chihos, Gutman, Shaqiri, and Kuipers. And the upside comes from set pieces. Chihos off of Shaqiri. Chihos is very good in the air, and maybe Gutman gets an assist every now and then to Kuipers. And yeah, that's my biggest sell. You know what I mean? And I'm not a salesman, but
what it is,
I can do. Yeah. So
we can only work with the team in front of us,
It's so funny too, because I think out of all of these that we've done, I think like Columbus has only been like, yeah, you can stack this team. Every other team's like, you want like pieces or like half, but like you never want the full thing. So that's not good. Or parity. I don't know. The MLS, baby. We love parity in the league.
Yeah. Well, I think there's potential for upside in the MLS. Almost more than a lot of other leagues, even on the shitty teams, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? So, like, there is a world where Chicago plays at home, the other team get a red card, and they win 3-0. Whereas, like, in a lot of the other leagues in Europe, if you've got a projected bottom team, you're kind of stretching for the upside. You know what I mean? Like, MLS does provide that a little bit where, Shaqiri could get 100. You know what I mean? There's a chance he's kind of been dust, but there's a chance. You know what I mean? And like from a Sorare standpoint, like being able to hit 100 is really, really valuable, more than ever now with the new changes.
He has hit 100 once, so there is a chance.
Well, I guess 80 plus. Yeah, I mean, there's some dark greens there. I mean, that's what I'm saying. And you'd say that he's been pretty horrific, but there's some
of those win you stuff.
Was not with Chicago though, so wasn't an MLS play. But you got 91,
But
96.
yeah, you got some
96.
dark greens there. They're competitive scores for sure from someone who's, by general consensus, been pretty horrific. So, I mean, that's the best I can do. That's the best I can do in selling the.
I love Donald's comment. Convince them not to get any of them so that he can get all the number ones. Love that.
There you go. Hey,
It's
right here,
the
right
opposite
now.
of pumping it, right? We gotta
Dump.
take all the air out of it so we can get all the number ones. I
Let's
love
go,
it.
Donald.
It's funny too because like it used to be nice because nobody wanted Orlando cards, but now people kind of want Orlando cards. So yeah, I'm not excited for the beginning of the season. Nashi, where do you sit? And you kind of brought it. We've hinted at it a few times, the new roadmap and stuff. Where do you sit on the line of owning like multiples of like a smasher? Because I'm in the belief that like now with the new changes and stuff, if you want to win and multi-entry, like you just want like 3 copies of Carlos Hill and 3 copies of Hector Herrera. Like,
Yeah, well,
I feel like that's the move these days.
That is part of the motivation where I went to uniques because there isn't that. That's out of the game. That's out of the game. They can't do that. So, and I don't have the money. Even at like I have some good cards in good super rares, but even at that level, I can see a world where they release the new cards, and these guys just do that. There's people out there with that, playing in that level that have that money. Whereas if I can pick up a Nathan, for example, and he's at risk, he's a very risky buyer, but this is part of my strategy. Is like I get these guys who have some upside, right? And Nathan, if you saw his scores at San Jose, just because his play style is Jules, he's one of very few elite defenders on his day. He got injured. He's on a better defensive team now. But the risk is that Reagan's a decent player too. So he's got to win out that spot. And it's clear Yaimar's going to play, So I think he's in there. But if the upside comes to fruition, now the same with Insigne and the same with Herrera, with them 3, I've took kind of a risk on. But there's a potential that I could have one of the top 3 strikers in Insigne from a Sorare standpoint. He was, again, like Toronto were terrible and his scores were excellent Sorare wise,
They got a major coaching upgrade too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think they're going to be. I actually think they're going to be a lot better if they get one more good signing in. I think they got a chance, But because I really like your boy Osorio's back healthy this year, and when they didn't have him, they just fell apart. Bradley's gone, and anyway, but yeah. So I've got Insigne. Herrera was the same situation. He's one of the best in the league. So on his day, he can do it, and yeah, that's kind of the thought process. But getting back to the point is, I bring in that guy there. There's one of one. They've got to wait for, so they can't kind of, if I'm ahead of them, if I'm out scouting them ahead of time, that's my only way to beat them because I can't buy my way. Yeah. I can't out compete them financially at that level. And it might all go up in flames, but it's kind of exciting to, it's one for the little guys to go up to that sort of level of the game, especially as it is now. And you're not just going up to get the Cap 240. I'm going up to try and win, to try and compete. So, I am worried about that. And I have actually already made some slight adjustments and then being them, And I overpaid for Nathan for sure. But again, it was like I was giving up guys that just I don't think can win for me anymore in Super Rare. So they then become, what am I doing, So I might as well take the risk on it. So I don't know what you guys think about that strategy. Obviously, it is risky, and obviously, but I think within the MLS, that's my best bet of doing it because I don't think these Bambi or these other guys, they almost, as much as any league, they react to the scores or the situations, whereas I'm trying to be proactive. And yeah, I can get it wrong. I know there's a chance that Jonathan Bond doesn't keep his spot or start. Stuver potentially could. There's all these things that could happen, but I'm getting them at a price where that's baked in. I think, well, if they do, I think if Bond starts, I've got Yoshida's unique for very cheap. So then I've got a stack there in a team that I think is going to be better. And that's kind of the beauty of the game, right? And if they do end up being better and one of the top teams in the West, then I have that and I can either sell that and then try and beat the guys again next year, or run it, and they can't have it. You know what I mean? So that's kind of where I'm at with it. So I'm up to Uniques to avoid that problem, because I am worried that I have Carlos Hill super rare, but that someone else might have 3 of them. You know, and then what's that doing for me? So
Every time you say you're scared of something or you're fearful of something, it's like a light goes off in my brain that says he's onto something. He knows what he's doing. He's about to go big, because every time you come back to us with these stories, and you always end up hitting it big. So I'm here to trust. I'm here to follow and say, like, yeah, you know what you're doing. So if you got a feeling, it's probably a good one.
yeah, I mean, you got to take your swing, right? I mean, I'm competitive. I like the changes actually aren't great. Like, I was doing well from the thresholds because I was covering all the scarcities, but in the long run of the game, I think it should have always been like this. And people think, and I think, because of the background in poker and everything, where it's a competitive environment and there's accountability, like visceral financial accountability for your mistakes and vice versa. So I'm more used to the fact that I'm going to pick up this Jonathan Bond for 0.7 or whatever it was, unique. And I know that maybe I think there's like a 70% chance he starts, you know? And if I get Yoshida in, and if he doesn't, I knew that there was a 30% chance he wasn't, and I take that L. And that was just, that's part of the skill of the game in a way, you know?
Yeah.
And now going forward, the people thinking like that will end up rising to the top of this new Sorare that we have quicker, you know, because you can't play this game with no risk. Because that's where the football knowledge, you know, there's the fantasy side where you can look at the scores and say, this is the best team I can put out. And then you spend the money to get that. But that's half the battle, because we haven't all got unlimited funds to do that. So little guys are going to, who are getting the buys before they happen, are getting the guys that come good. I remember Chris talking about Chris Brady before he'd played a pro game, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So if he'd gone out and acted on that and got a bunch of them, you know what I'm saying? That might, in the new Sorare, that might put him forward and he can start moving up the division. So I think the model is brilliant. And I think the MLS is a really niche way to start leveling up for people. So because of it's in the summer, and because now you need knowledge. If you want to get in before the thing, you need knowledge and you need to get things right. And for you guys and for me now, I think that's where my edge is, and hopefully the listeners too. So yeah, I'm not pumping the fire, but I'm pumping the MLS, and I'm pumping let's go get out there and start swinging with the big boys, you know. And that gets me almost more excited than what the game has been for me. Even though I've been, you know, just bringing in the cash and the thresholds, and it is nice, but like, yeah, like if I do get a win, or if I do get in there, and you know, that's going to be really satisfying for me. Yeah. And I think the longevity of the game should be like that. So yeah, but it's definitely cost me money in the short and long term, and I've had to take some risks on, and we'll see how it goes. But yeah, we'll see. I did get a Luis Muriel super rare in for a very good price, because somebody won him in the champion division, and I saw just as it got announced, and I put in a cheeky little last sale offer. And obviously, he's more valuable at Orlando than I picked him up. So I've got a bit of Orlando in me, Jorge. So
there you go. It might not play out right away with the whole Duncan McGuire thing, but I mean, he's here for 3 years, so I mean, he's gonna be the guy.
Muriel's gonna play, bro. Like he's gonna play. He's a fun player to watch too. Like I think they'll play both of them. I think you can just play both of them. Like they're that good. Like that's a dangerous. You could play Muriel in the 10 too. I know Ladero's there, but he ain't really got the legs anymore.
Yeah,
you could easily play Muriel behind and bring Ladero in later on to rotate, and I think that's a decent option for you guys. So.
Oh, it'll be really interesting to see what they do. It's going to be a fun signing. I'm glad you picked it up, but I'm also glad you kind of brought up the whole like taking a risk and stuff, because like especially now I see too many people talking about waiting to see what happens, and I'm like, yeah, that sounds great enough from a risk perspective, but now everybody's going to try to get in at the same time. It's going to be 100 people trying to squeeze through a 2-foot door, trying to rush in when this announcement or like their cue to like hop back in is, and people are going to get burned by it. And another thing that people need to talk about, people need to start thinking about cutting your risk and like cutting your losses early and not holding something to zero, because if you run out of money, you run out of money. If something doesn't work out, sell out of it before it goes down more, and then move
So
it
you're
into
saying
something
I should
else.
not be holding 10 Aaron Longs right now? Is that what you're telling me? I'll hold those till
Not
the day I
financial
die,
advice.
Jorge.
Taking them to the grave. No, but you're right there, and I think that's a kind of from a strategic standpoint. And I'm still learning the game, but like people don't necessarily account with them like kind of dead cards. Is it like people value their cards or their account? They say, oh, well, this guy like could be worth double. Say it's 0.1 now, could be 0.2 in a year if this ABC happens. But while he's sitting there, that card is not yielding you anything, right? So your card's actual value is the price you can sell it for at whatever point you're going to get out of it, the liquid price. But it's also the yield that it can make you in the meantime. So sometimes, and that's where like it's kind of frustrating because I feel like sometimes you could make a trade where you lose money
In the short term.
theoretically on the thing, but for your gallery, that piece is worth more to you. For example,
Right.
like if you have say I have Jonathan Bond and he goes and starts, right? And then I've got Yoshida, and then I say, well, if I want to really compete, I think I've got to have a clean sheet, basically. So now a Mickey Yamane unique might be really worth in a vacuum to any person, 0.4 now, or whatever it is. Like it's not a lot, but to me, maybe I give up a 0.5 card because that is exponentially beneficial to my strategy. You know what I mean? So when that hits, do you see what I'm saying? So it's not as black and white as look at Sorare data in this card. And I think some people understand that, but not everyone kind of picks up on the fact that, well, sometimes I need this guy. If I don't have this guy, all these guys are worth less. And I have these guys and I'm not set. Do you know what I'm saying? So there's so many different dynamics in the market, in the strategy that make it exciting. But also I do think people kind of get stuck on the, they don't, there's a beauty to taking risks, putting the blinders on, say, this is what I'm doing. And we'll see, we'll land where we may, but because it's frustrating. It is frustrating when you see your card going down in value or he gets injured or a bad transfer, and it's horrific. But I do think there's different mindsets you can have. It doesn't always have to be negative and sort of like, oh, why is this happening to me? It's like more like, well, what can you do about it? What are you going to do about it? You know what I mean? And that's kind of that's the mindset I try to have. Well, I do bitch to myself a lot.
It's not easier said than done.
Yeah, for sure.
Just like the term clean sheet and Jonathan Bond.
Thomas. I love Thomas. He's so good.
Thomas coming in hot.
Yeah, that's your strategy. You might be waiting a while because he doesn't get a lot of those. But like you said, you expect them to be better.
But when he does, I need to capitalize on it. That's
exactly.
That's the take.
2 times a year it happens. We've got to be ready for it. So just to kind of bring this back to the fire a little bit here as we kind of wrap it up.
Oh yeah.
Because it is a fire episode that we're talking about. Give me a number on where they finish in the Eastern Conference. We've mentioned how hard this conference is and how deep it is. Give me a number on where they finish.
I mean, optimistically or
both.
Realistically. Yeah. Optimistically, they're running away with the supporter shield.
Yeah. Well, I think realistically they can't. I think they're an underdog to make the playoffs. Just because, give me a team that on paper you think's worse than them. Like, I could maybe say Montreal,
DC.
Toronto if they don't figure stuff out, but
DC,
Montreal.
DC is struggling. I mean,
hey, put some respect on Montreal's name.
Yeah, I don't know. They got
I don't think Montreal.
Joseph Martinez. I don't know. I think Nashville could maybe. I don't know if Nashville haven't. I mean, I don't know if they could struggle, but
they're always so consistent, though. It's tough to bet against Nashville.
But I like Atlanta. Atlanta's got talent. They got Armada.
Mm-hmm.
Put them in there. If you think of like Charlotte, they got Dean Smith, a good manager. I think.
But they just sold everybody.
Yeah, they sold every. So it's a clean slate. We don't know yet what they're going to do. If they don't do anything, obviously, as of now, they're not looking good. But I'm kind of waiting and seeing on them. Cincy are very good. Columbus, Miami, New York, Nashville, New England, New York City, NYCFC, I think I've got a good amount better. Red Bulls, Forsberg, they should be better. Orlando, I really like. Philly. So where do you see, as optimistic as you be, I just don't see really, you can't honestly say that Chicago compete with them on paper with them teams. So
for a full season, any given day.
Yeah, on a day,
hang.
and that's the beauty of Sorare and the MLS. But I think realistically, I think a good if they can sneak into the playoff, the playoffs or whatever,
Playing
if they can get to the last 10 games,
tryout.
if they can get to the last 10 games of the season with a sniff, I think that's a pretty good season. And then they got to try and add some quality next year. Like if I'm managing the franchise, but I think on certain days, like we can see, I think there's some, I don't think it's like there's at least a structure of, at least something going on there. They've like shored up a lot of areas. They've got you can see what they're going for. And they just haven't got
the dead weight.
Yeah, they cut their weight. There's something happening, but if I'm being honest, like in the West, maybe you could say, like they could shoot for the playoffs, but them teams, I mean, so many teams got so good this time that it's just, there's like almost 6, 7 just locks that you're like, they're going to make it. No, I mean, I'd be shocked if they. So then you got all the rest of us vying for. As long as they finish higher than DC, I don't really mind.
We'll see.
Yeah, it's going to come down. Decision day is going to be really spicy this year. I think it's going to be kind of like the West was like that this past season, but it's going to be a lot of two game swings last day of the season. It's going to come down to winning that last game. It's going to be spicy. It's going to be fun. The East is fun this year for sure.
Real quick, give me a breakout player from this team.
It's Guti, yeah. Guti, I mean, I don't know if he counts, but he hasn't. I feel like if you watch him and you're in the States and you see his potential and his ability, like he's not a breakout, but he hasn't really become on the level of he's not being talked about like a Facundo Torres kind of level of international attention yet. And he might not be where Facundo Torres is yet, but he could. I really believe that he could be playing it, could get to that level because he's so young. He's so I don't know exactly how old he is now, but he was sort of 19 years old when he. You know what I mean? He's 20 now. That's so young. The difference between 20 and 22, 23 is pretty huge in football. So he's not guaranteed, but he's someone that he's pushing Xherdan Shaqiri, the most expensive salary in the league, out of his position. So if he's going to do that, and if he's going to keep that position, it's because he's going to be playing at that level. So I like to see him be consistent. I like to see him working with a striker that can do something. The other one will be Turan if he can stay fit, because we spoke about that earlier. He has athletically and just everything. He's just an absolute animal with so much potential. He's very young too, but he just hasn't put a string of games together. And sometimes you're watching him, you think this guy's just an absolute beast, and that's kind of a left field pick because he's centre backs. Who gives a shit about centre backs in the MLS except from Aaron Long? But
my man.
But he could be very, very, very good. If he stays fit for the season, it will be him for sure.
I love it. There you go. There you have it. We have, honestly, I didn't think there was this much to talk about the Chicago Fire, but there was. And I don't know just the way Nashi articulates himself, but I'm a little high on the Fire right now. I don't know. Not financial advice.
He's buying the hype. He's buying the hype.
Nashi has done the job. Is there anything else you feel like people should know, Nashi? Anything about you? What you got going on? And we can get out of here.
No, that's it. That's all. I'm just going into the oblivion of MLS uniques. So old 30-plus-year-old Insigne and thing. So Jonathan Bond clean. I'm resting my future riches on Jonathan Bond unique. So that should tell you everything you need to know about my mental stability at this point.
Well, we'll have to bring you on.
Should we
yeah, go for it.
Give a little teaser.
You have the spotlight. Go for
what
it.
we got going on.
Let them know. Drop the alpha.
We're in some conversations to have a fun next episode. Let's just put it that way. So you definitely want to get those notifications turned on and figure out when we are going to be back, because it might be kind of spicy.
Yeah, we might have
That's
a little
all I'll
special
say.
guest, a little professional
Might be
guest.
dynamite.
Oh, it could be, but get those notifications on. Make sure you subscribe, comment, all that fun stuff, and we'll see you in the next episode. Nashi, you're